And we are on. What's up, everybody? A little bit dark here. That's better. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing today? IWOCon is almost ending, right? We're finally here. Hello, Alexander. Good to see you again. Just get my light straight. This is better. Yeah, Strats, I'm glad you can see that this is me. You would never know, right? Look, Vedantas in the scene. So you got the memes from yesterday. That's good to know. I'm officially changing my name. It's supposedly a very difficult name to pronounce to English speakers. But you're among friends. You can call me whatever you want. So yeah, guys, can you hear me fine? Is my voice okay? Is too loud? Too low? How are you doing? Please let me know in the chat. Can you hear me fine? Do you think I can scream a little bit more? I should show my t-shirt. It's just a bunch of skeletons, and one of them is doing a dab. On our day, gamer. Wow, nice to see you here. Good evening. And it sounds good. Cool. Hi, Buck Depths. Great to see you. Well, so I think we can begin. So spooky skeletons. That's right. Let's begin so we can have a little time to talk. So this is it. This is the presentation making a small game look big. And you must have realized by now that the tiny guy on the right is me, Felipe Dantas. So nice to meet you. And if I already meet you, nice to see you again. Thanks for sticking around. We'll have some Q&A time at the end, but if you have any questions along the way, just type them out, and I'll keep an eye on the chat. Without any further ado, let's dive right in and understand what is this going to be about. We have to say that I work on a really small studio. They got a challenge of making a big game, and this is way out of our league, actually. And then we started to think, is the game really big, or it just looks big? What I'm going to talk to you guys today is about the process that we went and we are going through right now to create this huge world. I got a few tips that we learned along the way, and I believe that it could be a good experience for someone with a similar background than what we are going on right now. And I hope this help you guys to create big games and understand that big experiences are actually better than big games. Let's get this straight. Let's see a little bit more of it. I have to adjust my light because this is a very bright content. Okay, this is fine. So yeah, first things first, I gotta say that when I say big, it's not the same. I ain't talking about AAA games. I'm talking about games with big experience. For instance, to the left here you can see two really popular indie games, Hollow Knight, Hades. Every indie developer has to have heard of these games at least one in their lives. They became huge success because they are great games in a lot of factors, but they are indie on this concept. And on the other hand, we got, you might have heard of these games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Big AAA games from huge companies, Ubisoft and Nintendo. And okay, all of these are good games, but what is actually my point here? To say clearly, let's take a look at how much time the players spend on these games. It's good to notice that this isn't the official time that the developers say it is, but it's an average time that the website howlongtobeat.com gathered from thousands of players. So of course, people who can beat these games faster or slower, but the average time of completion of Hollow Knight is 26 hours. 64 completionists. Completionists meaning that someone has to want to get everything that the game has to offer, get every side quest, get every item, and etc. On Hades, the time is 21 hours for main story and 97 for completionists. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, 54 hours or 133 for completionists, and Zelda, 50 or 119 hours. Okay, right now we can see very clearly that the big AAA games have more time of gameplay. But what really got my curiosity is how much more time the player is willing to give to a game. Usually, the main mechanics are explored in the main story, and all that extra time is for stuff that, double quotes here, are extra. The player doesn't actually need to do that stuff to enjoy the game, to enjoy what developers wanted to deliver to the player. And crafting the extra content is a whole lot of work by itself. I wasn't in any way involved in making of any of those games, but I can kind of guess how the last two of our lists got themselves to do it. With a whole bunch of money. I've seen in the chats, yeah, Karaku Seeds, actually one of good example of how this 190 hours got to be on. Zelda Nakamura, good to see you again. Indie Game Lover, yeah, nice. You were awesome. Please stand by. So yeah, those companies are pretty huge. I'm sure the developers of these games are amazing, and they deserve all the credits of creating such an amazing games, amazing experience. But let's be real, these are some of the most valuable IP of some of the biggest and greatest game developers and publishers around. That means that they got cash, lots of it. And if they want to spend their time and effort on a whole new stage that not all players will encounter, not all players will play, that's fine. If they need more than 5 years of developing and paying a whole team of more than 100 people to make a lot of side quests, to make Karaku Seeds, like you guys said in the chat, okay, no problemo. I'm obviously over exaggerating, but you got what I mean. These guys have cash. What makes me much more curious is about how a game like Hades, for instance, could get this amount of content, extra content, while being a much smaller studio. And don't get me wrong, the guys that created Hades, by the way, they are called Super Giant Games, which is a name that really fits this presentation. These guys are huge. These guys are somewhat of a rock star between indie game devs. They are already famous. They have released quite a good amount of games before, and those games have made huge success. So they got a lot of cash as well, but not in the slightest the same amount of this other two below. And somehow the difference of time between completion in the main story and completion all of it is absolutely high. To be more precise, it is 76 hours. Compared to AC, which is 79, is almost the same. And that number is huge. It blew my mind when I saw these numbers. Any game developer that spent years making a game that is playable for just 1 hour knows that creating extra 76 hours of gameplay with something that is not exactly what you wanted the player to experience, the player needs to experience the main story, and not all of the players will be completionists. So we spent 76 hours just to get what you want to get to the game, exploring the world, is absurd. Let me level with you for a second. With that time, you could cook more than 1,500 instant noodles. That's a whole bunch of noodles, dude. It's amazing. You can end some hungers with it. And you know, it isn't quite fair to just compare the two of them, Hades and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because the actually time to beat the main story is different. the time to beat the main story of Hades is less than half the time to beat the main story of AC. So if we treat the main story as 100% of the mechanics, 100% of the developer said that the players need to experience to get the whole game, that extra time becomes a way cooler number. And by the way, since you seem to like my little instant noodles joke here, right now I'm calling it the Noodle Factor. The Noodle Factor is that we're claiming that the main story is 100% of the mechanics of the game, and that extra time adds to this Noodle Factor. And that's what Hades shine. It is 461% times greater than the main story, while AC is 246%. And this is huge. This is way huger now that Hades, a much smaller company with a much smaller games in various aspects, got almost the double of the Noodle Factor. That is, the player is willing to spend more time besides the main story, besides the main mechanic of the game. Based on that, we can say that this Noodle Factor, this factor that makes the player wants to play more of the game, isn't just the length of the game, isn't just the time spent in the game, but also the value that the player have, the exploration, and I'm not only talking about environment, I'm talking about exploring the gameplay, exploring the mechanics. We'll talk about more of that about it later, and also memorable experiences. I got to believe that these three little words are the keywords. They are the triforce of having nice noodles. With them, you can have a much more juicy noodle, a noodle that makes you hungry, that makes you kind of want more. And that is the experience that these games make us do. And in a way, Hades do that greater than Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We can say by these numbers that we got from howlongtobeat.com. So based on it, here's the catch. In some ways, Hades feels bigger than AC Valhalla. We just saw the time from the gameplay. AC Valhalla is actually a bigger game. But this Noodle Factor, as I'm calling it right now, make Hades feel bigger. Because the player can explore its concept a little bit more, maybe. Okay, now we explore the concept of the word big in a deeper meaning than just the length of the game. I can finally tell you guys what the hell did I start thinking about these noodles. Yeah, Haru, if you want some ramen right now, you are on the spot, because this is the deal. These games make you hungry. And of course, these photos doesn't help as well. But let me tell you a little bit about my experience on the subject. So hi again, I'm Felipe Dantas from City Studios. We're a small studio formed in 2016, and we have right now 9 people working with us. We're a team based in Brazil, and what we try to do is tied to the philosophy of the studio, and that is better games. And that motto means that we always try to make better games than the ones that we did before. We always try to push ourselves further. We hope that someday we can create better games than the whole industry is doing right now, and maybe, just maybe, make the world a little better with our games as well. And you know, this is kind of cute, right? This is a nice motto, this is a nice philosophy. But the good thing about it is, with that philosophy, we have made the studio grow in incredible speed and get to our current project. And that one is What the Duck. The project is important to what I'm about to tell you, so it's important to at least know a little bit of the project. So for those of you who don't know it yet, I'm going to show you a little teaser that's 1 minute long, that's really quick. Take a look.
Finally, I will summon my spiritual animal. I bet it's gonna be something awesome, like a dragon or a tiger. It doesn't matter. Even if my animal can't fight, I will make up for it. I'll do the hard work.
Let me see if I've got this straight. You want to challenge the strongest beings in the world while your spiritual animal is a duck.
Come on, you can get it!
You are aware that he is going to die, right?
I'm actually surprised he survived for 50 seconds in this video.
Yeah, cool. So this is it. This is our game. I hope you like it. Please wishlist. Follow us on social media and yada yada. But I haven't showed that trailer to just make that hook. But you should wishlist it, please. Actually, the last couple of slides that I... oh, Shreds made a duck, made a quack. Cool. And I haven't showed that trailer just to make that hook. The last couple of slides that I show you guys are actually kind of important. They're actually kind of a lot of information that you need to understand to see the mess that we are going through. I told you guys that City Studio is a small studio formed in 2016. But that was really great. The personality in it was well done. Well, thank you very much. It was a really well thought process for staff. And we are pretty happy with the results. So thank you. And yeah, City Studio was formed in 2016. Although some of us have had experience in game dev industry before, this is not way longer than a lot of indie studios have been around. But it's not as shorter as well. We've been developing games together for half a decade by now, and yes, we are counting 2020. So you can say that we are experienced, but not that much. And after that, I told you that we have 9 people working with us. One of them is me again. Hi. And this is way below what bigger studios use to create larger games, but it is a way higher number than a lot of indie studio has. I've seen indie studios to begin with 3, 2, or even 1 person, and they make excellent games. They make awesome games. So we got a few people. We got a nice number of people, but not that much. Nothing that we can compare to those big studios making bigger games. And lastly, I told you that we are from Brazil. And that is relevant because if you follow international news, you might have heard that Brazil, let me put it lightly, economically, we are not at our peak. Brazil is not at its peak economically. And any Brazilian studio that is making an international game right now has to pay some bills in US dollars. And that can be kind of a hard time. The dollar is really high for us. So anything that we have to pay, voiceovers, contracts to game developing in consoles, the price of the game tagging studio, the localization, everything that we have to pay in US dollars is a huge load for us. Then I showed the trailer, and it may look like a really quick fun teaser. I'm glad you guys liked it in the chat. It really makes me happy. But even if you don't realize it by watching the trailer, you should have noticed some things. Just by looking at the trailer, you know that we have voiceovers. We know that you have quite a different amount of animals. We know that we have a good amount of characters, and that brings us back to the voiceovers, so we have more voiceovers. You were able to see that the player can have different weapons on the game. And you got to see a little bit of the game mechanics as well, the battle mechanics at best. You got to see enemies damaging other enemies. We got to see a little power. We call it the duck dash, but it's actually a teleport. Much like Final Fantasy, the 15, I believe. We got to see a parry, an enemy goes to attack, and the character just swings a huge axe on it. We got to see at least 4 landscapes, and spoiler alert, we have more than 4 landscapes. We got to see a little bit more of how the exploration works in the game. You can walk with the human, you can walk with the duckling, you can fly with the duckling, and somehow you can even fly a dragon. And all of these things that you might not have realized it while you were watching the trailer is that this is a big freaking game. It have a lot of stuff going on. And much like the duckling fighting huge enemies, to make this game we are kind of screwed, I gotta tell you. It's a amount of load work that we have to put it to make this game be what we want it to be. So we knew right from the beginning that if we want to succeed in making this game, we will have to play smart. We will have to focus on what we can do good and let the game expand from it. We don't have to make a small game and make it feel big, make it look big. And now the title of the presentation seems have a little more sense, right? That's when we get to that Noodle Factor. I'm going to make you guys hungry again. I'm not so pretentious at the point of telling you that my game, the What the Duck, is just as great as those legendary games that we talked about, Hollow Knight and Hades. But we learned something from them, and I truly believe that What the Duck has a really good Noodle Factor. The player wants to be in that world for a longer time. We're actually seeing this here in IWOCon. The demo that we released here, it takes 15 minutes to beat. We crafted it really so it can be really quick, so people in physical events wouldn't take a long time on a line waiting to play the game. We also added a lot of stuff here and there, trying to test this Noodle Factor, and we work it. Almost every stream that streamed What the Duck on this week streamed for more than an hour, and not only follow the main process of the game, not only dying and redoing it, but exploring the world, trying to know what you can do with the duck, knowing what you can do with the guy, trying to talk to the NPCs. So I think we got it going. We will have a good Noodle Factor in What a Duck. And on that spirit, I separated for you guys 5 tips to follow if you want to make your small game look big. These are all quite simple stuff that we learned along the way, and I believe that they can make a difference of a good and bad Noodle Factor. And better yet, if a small team will be able to make a game that feels big. And to keep us in time, let's just go ahead and talk about the first one. Be realistic. That can... let me just check the chat real quick. Noodle Factor should be an investment measure. Yeah, I'm repeating it quite a lot in this presentation in hopes that in a year from now, someone will say, oh, the Noodle Factor of my game. More than an hour. Yeah, even when the game broke, this is true, Alexander. Our game broke a lot while streamers were playing it. And none of them stopped playing the game. They restarted it, they played, they got a save again, they explored it in another way. So they really were interested in the world of the game. We thought it was kind of magic. The first tip was ducks. It could be. Have a duck in your game, you have everything you need. No, it actually be realistic. That can be kind of a downer, but it has to be the first thing to consider. There's nothing wrong in dreaming high, in wanting to do something that you have never done before. Those things are the ones that make us go further. So yeah, try to make new things. But when we are talking about commissioned product, you gotta understand the market, you gotta understand the industry, you gotta understand yourself, and you gotta understand your limits. Let's take a look at What the Duck. At the beginning, when the project was just on paper, we wanted it to have 12 big stages. In each one of them, the player would get another playable character to join your party, and we will have everything that is great about our favorite games. Even AAA ones. Again, the Korok that you guys talked is a huge quest on Legend of Zelda. They wanted to have something similar in What the Duck, and we wanted to have a lot of tiny experience that these AAA games can afford to show us. But then something happened. We got a small funding for the game. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was enough for us to make the game, to take the game out of paper, to make sure that we will get paid, that we will be able to buy ourselves some instant noodles. But then we have to keep it real, because that funding got ourselves a budget and a time schedule. So we could not just think of the game and yeah, okay, one day we will make it. We have a time limit now. So we've cut the stages in half. Now you only have 2 playable characters, and we will only focus on the mechanic of changing between a human to battle and a duck to explore. That's the main mechanic of the game. We didn't want it to change the whole world of the narrative, but that was an easy fix. The main character just don't need to be on those stages. He doesn't need to travel to those stages, but they exist in the world. He meets characters that are from there. He uses items that are exported from these other provinces, and this ended up working to bring more depth to the world building, making the whole world feels more real, more alive. And who knows, have some ground to explore in the case of a future sequel, if the game sells well. So we got it going. The game is still quite large, but suddenly it didn't feel too much out of our reach anymore. And that reality check can and should happen in the middle of development as well. For instance, we found out early on the development that animation was our weak spot. We had only one member of the team working on 3D characters, and we had a lot of facial expressions, and a whole lot of high stylized animals making retouching and reutilizing animations out of the table. And animations was really something that we found out early on that we will have trouble all along the way. So in the demo we decided to make the cutscenes in a semi-comic book manner, like you see on the right. We could animate few things here and there, but if we make a single keyframe for each panel of the comic book, it is already acceptable. It ended up fitting quite well with our colorful world, with our dialogue system, which I'll talk more soon enough. So yeah, we got it way easier and with a much more smooth result. It got a little personality to the game, I believe. One last thing that I really want to talk about while in the subject of keep it real. Don't neglect project management. I don't want to spend much time talking about it because there's a whole lot of subjects there, a whole lot of talks about this. We have some of them here in IWOCon this week. But I've seen a lot of game developers that just go along with the flow. That's, oh boy, that's living dangerously. Project management can help keep your project on rails. It can show you what your weak spots are and help you understand what to do to fix them. There are a lot of cool and free tools that can help with that. But if you have the possibility, apply that function to one of your members. Make someone specialized with it. It will be worth it, I guarantee you. On C Studios, we have worked with Trello. That's probably the most famous one. We have worked with Hack and Plan. This is really similar, but it's made for game development. And it got a really nice tool that you can tie your game design document to the work that the team is doing. And you can see real time how much of the game you actually finish it, how much is waiting to be finished. It is a really nice tool. Right now, we decided to create our own tool because we are lacking some experience that these tools don't have it, but that's not necessary at all. For anyone that is beginning, those tools are great and they're free and they're just cool. Do it, please. Don't try to make a game that feels big, or even a small game. Just don't do it without good project management. You will thank me later. So yeah, now that you have worked on your expectations and got everything that you think your team will be able to do, the next tip is create tools. More than once in the development process, you'll find yourself doing stuff that are not exactly hard to make, but they are repeated several times. So the half-an-hour process ends up taking you days or weeks and even months. So it is, and not to tell you it sucks. When you do the same work over and over again, you get to feel tired. So it is a good idea to take your time in creating a tool that can help you do the job. So the future you will be grateful. Sometimes you know what tools you're going to need beforehand, sometimes you don't. For instance, we had already a dialogue system called RPG Talk. We have changed a few things here and there, and bam, it was good to go, and it fitted our needs in What a Duck. The whole dialogue of the game is based on the system. And by the way, the system is available for free on GitHub and Unity Asset Store, so feel free to take it and use it on your awesome games. Yeah. And remember when I talked to you guys about the comic cutscenes? we created a tool to do them as well. And for those of you who don't know Unity game engine, this right GIF may not seem like much, but I can't express in words how much this little tool saved our time. Unity has a thing called timeline that is there for creating cutscenes or highly sequenced stuff happening in the game. And we use it for our cutscenes. But they suck when you need to adjust the timing of these cutscenes. If you got it wrong at the beginning, you want it to be in the end, you want that scene to move a little longer, a little faster, it sucks. So we created a little tool that do this in just a few clicks. That's what is showing on the GIF right now. And this next one is pretty cool. We have kind of a big world, and as such, on an RPG game, of course, we need a lot of NPCs. This easily became a problem as well, because again, we only had one person working on the 3D characters. So we developed a system, much like a character customization, that we can easily build an NPC changing several measurements of your body. We expanded that system to work with facial expression as well, you can see it at the right here. So now it will be pretty easy to change emotions even on our main characters. So we changed the whole concept of creating characters for the game to use this little system that personalizes everything. And now suddenly every human character of the game was easy to make and was easy to make express itself. It was game changer for the cutscenes as well. The next problem to solve on the NPCs were the clothes. Just as we have a lot of range of NPCs with a lot of different bodies, the clothes need to fit those different bodies as well. And that was a problem because our 3D artists would have to model the body, the clothes to fit everybody. So you have to model the clothes maybe 10 times just to make sure it is on the right shape. And that is a lot of time consuming as well. So you got it. We developed another tool to make the mesh of the clothes follow the vertices on the mesh of the body. All that is out of the editors, so you don't need any extra processing during the gameplay. Problem solved. You can see here on the left that we play around with the body. We make a little bit fatter, we make a little bit more chest, we have a little bit more thinner, and the clothes adjust itself easily. You can see that it breaks for an instance, but the clothes just follow the mesh around, and okay, I'm now following the body. Yeah, you can add so much variety with just a single tool. It was pretty great. And we also make huge use of texture masks. So we can also make several colors on the same material. So even if you use the same mesh for the clothes, we can have one that is yellow, one that is green, one that is red, and suddenly it feels like a whole new cloth. I can't express enough how this saved our time. We were actually, at one point in development, we were actually thinking of reducing or removing a lot of the NPCs just so we weren't sure that we would be able to have them. And this would remove a lot of cities, a lot of side quests that we have planned on the game as well. So just this little tool saved us a lot of what the game has become. And there's that. If something is taking too much of your time, it's probably worth to create a tool. This is one of the things that the project management can help you figure out. The time that you will spend creating a tool will be worth it. Will save time in the future. This thing you need to consider. But I really think you should do. You should create all the tools that could save time in the job. Pokemon has 800 monsters and 10 NPCs. That's true. So yeah, next we got don't reinvent the wheel. This one is a giver. If you already have a tool or an asset that does exactly what you want, there hardly is a reason for you to make it all over again. For instance, most game developers nowadays use game engines. We use Unity, some use Unreal Engine, and there's a lot of game engines that they're cool. And okay, they are a huge time saver because they are made of tools created for several types of games. Cool. Well, there is married to those willing to create a game from scratch. For example, you will learn quite a lot, you'll have all the control of everything that your application does, and you'll probably have a way lighter game on the CPU and on the RAM than to use a popular game engine. But that is, of course, a whole lot more of time consuming. To some of that, maybe you already have what you need. We proudly use Unity engine. It solved us a lot of trouble. A lot of tools that we need were already there, so that's fine. It's really popular, so we have a lot of tutorials when we don't know how to make some stuff. It's pretty cool. And on the same spirit, we use quite a bunch of ready-to-go assets as well. Most of these engines have a place where you can find a variety of assets, and even third-party websites like Mixamo for animations. There are a lot of free assets, but there are also paid ones. So it's another thing for you to consider. The value of the assets that you want will save you enough time to don't actually create the assets yourself. On the right, you can see some of the assets that we use on What the Duck, and saved us a huge amount of pain. So we got stuff that really help us out. Final IK for better animations, some quality of life inside Unity, something to mess around with the terrains. The mini-map that you see on the game was highly based on this asset. And yeah, if they are, double quotes again, behind the scene assets, I say just use them, they are awesome. But if they are audio or visual ones, you might have to look a little with more care to them. Because if your main character is an asset that you bought somewhere else, that means that another game from another studio might want to buy the same asset, and this is it. Your visual aspect of the game, your identity, is over. A whole lot of games using the same asset. If you're making a cartoon game and get yourself an ultra realistic environment, it might need some tweaking to work, or it will give you, the player, a strange feeling. So you have to consider when you're thinking of visual assets. And on that note, I think it is important to talk about one certain type of gamer. It is a gamer that studied a little bit of game dev, enough to know some of those assets, but not enough to know that they exist to be used. Let me clarify. To our vegetation, we use an asset called Fantasy Adventure Environment. It's pretty cool. We thought it was a nice feature with the duck, and it saved us a huge amount of load that creating each tiny grass and each tree from scratch would give us. I was not involved in the development of these other games, but I'm pretty sure that somebody in Mara and my writing stables use the same asset. And there's nothing wrong with that. The asset is there to support the game. It's not like the main purpose of any of those games is to look at a tree. If the main character of the game was the tree, it might sound fishy, sound strange, but it isn't. The asset is there, it does its job, and it even looks different in all of these screenshots that I show you guys. But there will always have that gamer, there will always come along that guy, the little prick that will say something like, "Oh, but I've seen this tree in another place. You didn't grab this tree from Oblivion, so you can say you made the game by yourselves now, can you?" And he says it like he's the pretty smartest guy all over the place. Yeah, thank you for agreeing with me, an hour-a-day gamer. The assets are there for that purpose. And to those gamers that blame on games that use those assets, I just say ignore them. They just don't be that person, and ignore the person if they come out. It is hard to ignore because they usually are pretty loud, but you can tell that they are not much into game dev because they usually are the same ones that put these other games on a pedestal. Another game that say that he made a game that would be all assets because I know nothing of game dev. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that actually. You gotta understand that you lose a bit of the identity of your game when you have mainly main character and main stage assets, but there's nothing actually wrong. People aren't there to look at the tree, to look at the grass. They're there to play the game. If the game is fun, okay, then it actually doesn't matter that much. And those kind of gamers that blame the ones who do this, they, you know that they aren't really game devs as they are saying they are. And you can tell them because usually they are the ones that put these games on a pedestal. Forza Horizon 3, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn. There's nothing wrong with these games. The games are awesome. These are great games. They are a whole different level of game development, right? They're made by huge companies. Well, do you know what else they have in common? You got it. They all use the same asset to do the vegetation. This asset is called Speed Tree. This is a little software that can help you have a lot of realistic trees around. So there you go. If even those huge companies are not afraid of using crafted assets to save time and money, why should you be? So yeah, this is it. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you think smart enough, you will be able to have a unique game while optimizing the most of your process. And talking about optimization, the next tip I have for you guys is optimize everything. You know you got it. You are realistic with the objective. You have created tools and used assets that are already there to make your game. You're good to go. But none of that is worth anything at all if your game doesn't run on your player's machine. Another gamer is saying Horizon Zero Dawn is one of his favorite games, and he didn't even notice the trees before. He doesn't care if he's seen the trees before. And this is it. It's a small part of the game. You can say that Horizon Zero Dawn is a awful game because it used the same tree as other game. Come on. The game has a lot more than that. It really hits me off. It makes me angry when I see people bashing on those games if they use one asset or another. I just can't understand. So yeah, on optimization, I've seen a lot of developers losing their minds trying to deal with consistent frame rate. And obviously nobody likes frame drops during the gameplay. Depending on the game, this is crucial to the experience. But you know what is way worse than a frame drop? A crash. Your game doesn't run in at all and just giving up in the middle of a session. And usually the one to blame is this little guy, the RAM. Or as I like to call it, your worst nightmare. For a game to feel big, the player usually has to have a lot of possibilities. It can see a lot of things, it can hear a lot of stuff here and there, and usually have a lot of things happening at the same time. All of this is stored in the RAM. And if you run out of space, most operational systems will close your game, causing the famous crash. The entire system won't be able to run anything anymore. Any familiar with the blue screen of death? It's a nice cool meme. And mostly that one's the guy to blame. This is a much bigger problem if your platform targets consoles and mobile platforms that usually have a weaker hardware. I'm saying usually because this is slowly changing depending on your target audience. They might already have phones with hardware that are way more bigger, way more robust. They have way more power than most of consoles. A recent game that utilizes greatly is Genshin Impact. I have an iPhone 7, a phone that is 5 years old now, and it's not exactly a gamer phone. And the game runs with a low FPS and making my battery hotter than hell, but it runs. They did an amazing job optimizing the use of the RAM, and it looks beautiful. Really, really good job. And this is a really complex topic, and I'm no specialist at all, but I want to leave here some tips that helped us live in peace with the RAM. First one is pulling everything that you can. Pulling is a technique that reutilize assets instead of creating new one, destroying them in real time. It's something like a refurbished asset. You can reutilize assets instead of destroying them. It's great. MIP maps are great for textures. Most of 3D games use it. If you have something really far from the player, it doesn't have to have this ultra 4K quality texture. But this can be used on 2D games as well. Stream every asset that you can, and even the whole scenes. This means that you can load and unload a lot of things while your player is already playing the game. And control the priorities yourself. If you can check how much run you have left, you can decide yourself during the runtime what is less important that your game can unload or show versions with less detail. So you can make some rock disappear, and that will save a lot of memory, so you can have an enemy right in front of the player. I'm just making examples, but there's that. Control the priorities yourself. So here we are. Your team were able to make the game. Your player is able to play the game. To the last tip, but definitely not least, is to make it feel alive. Even if you were able to create a huge world, it can feel empty and soulless if you don't use that wisely. Remember that it isn't about having a huge space and increasing your play time. It is about the feeling that the player has. Now, there isn't much written in stone here, but let me show you what we are doing in What the Duck. First thing that we try to do is give value to the ambience. What you're seeing right now is the very first thing that the player sees in the very first village that he goes to in the game. It may not look like much, but even if subconsciously, you can see kids playing around, leaves flying, grass and trees moving, a guy chopping down a tree, something flashing on background. Whoa, maybe I can go there. You can see something out of common to the left. Maybe that is where I need to go. On the right, you can see shadows of the clouds. And by now, you don't really know that if the game has time, if the day passes, if it can get to night. But only because of that little shadow, you now have the feeling that the time passes. Of course, sound effects are crucial here, showing what superficie you're stepping on. The kids are happily playing or they're running around with fear. The guy cutting a tree, maybe you can hear some water, and that water can say you that you have a river down there. So yeah, take a good time working on an ambience. We try to explore the gameplay a lot. Again, I do not mean only hide items around to the player to find it, but use the gameplay in a smart way that the player feels pretty smart when he finds it. Our most different gameplay mechanic is that you can change controls between the human and the duckling, so you have spread of things that you can only do with the duck. I mean, swimming, finishing, tiny puzzles, and even flying around. But my favorite ones are the ones that use the mechanic as a whole, that you have to change controls between the human and the duckling on the fly to really explore the world. That can be by opening a tiny door with the human and then entering it with the duck, using the duck's power to make the human reach further, or the classic puzzle on the right that you need the characters to step on 2 switches to then finish a tiny puzzle and discovering something new. Just like that. Here we go. And yeah, although exploring the gameplay is the best way to go, breaking the gameplay might be good as well. We have a few mini games scattered around that can help refresh players' mind and make them don't feel tired of the main gameplay, while at the same time they are completely optional. So if the player only wants the main story, only wants the main mechanic, okay, here you go. But if he wants to explore the world a little bit more, he gets rewarded from it with experiences. And this helps us creating memorable experiences. There is, of course, a lot of ways of doing that. If your game has a narrative, it could be the climax or a really hard level, and etc. But with these tiny experiences like mini games, your brain tells you that you are doing something different, and it gets recorded. It can be something like playing Gwent for the first time on The Witcher, or find out that your sidecast created a whole new city on Zelda, or something way more simple, like petting your dog on Hades and getting an item for it. These are memories that the player will cherish. Yeah, thank you, Our Day Gamer. I really appreciate it. Spike, Thales, great to see you again. So this is it. You did it. Those are the tips I have for you guys. Now hopefully you will be more inclined to make sure that your team will be able to make the game, make sure that the player will be able to play the game, and make sure that it feels alive. If you gather all of this, I'm pretty positive that your game will look huge, even if it has a small playtime. Remember, when aiming for a big game, do yourself a favor. and go for a good and juicy Noodle Factor. Again, I'm trying to make this a word. This is it, guys. I hope that these tips help you in some way. If you want to discuss them further, follow us on social media. Let's have a chat on our Discord. Looking at this image, it really has made me hungry. So that means it's about time for our Q&A. Just in time. We have 10 minutes. So what to say, guys? Have any doubts? Want to discuss a little further? What are the experiences that you guys had on recent games that you guys played that got you your memory? It's something simple, just like petting the dog on Hades and gives you items. What was something great that you experienced recently? Another gamer, great tips here. Ah, thank you, really appreciate it. Alexander is 2 times hungry. that actually is the meaning that I wanted to give to the Noodle Factor. You are hungry for the game experience. So yeah, but I am now hungry as well. We have a lot of new followers. I ain't talking of it during the gameplay, but thank you everyone that follow us. We usually stream twice a week, so it's nice. We stream stuff game developer related, so it's nice to have you around. So yeah, let me know. Pleasure supporting the friends. It's a pleasure to having you with us. Thank you very much. Let me know what was something in a game that you guys played that really stuck in your mind, that really made you think, whoa, this is it, I will remember this. Let me hear a little bit. Off topic, but how long have you been doing dev work? Wow. This is a nice question. For me personally, I've been working in the game industry for more than 10 years. I believe it makes 11 this year, 12, maybe 12 this year. But I was really young back then, and I was kind of getting the hang of everything. On City Studios, we began in 2016, so there has been 5 years that we are making games as a team. And What the Duck's been in development, the funding, the cash going on in early 2019. So we are entering the 3rd year of development. Just like I said, I like Genshin Impact events. Cool. You know me, I love rhythm games, and they made a way for us to play. That's awesome, Talis. That's great. Genshin Impact has a lot of events, and they have something really great that we don't have in What the Duck. That is the online experience. Just because you are going around with your friends, doing quests, doing stuff, exploring the world together, this is pretty memorable. I believe they have a really nice Noodle Factor. You are right. Okay. Alexander, how do you measure if something is worth the effort to put on the game to make it bigger? That's a really nice question. And again, this is something that good project management can help you figure out. Because with a good project management, you know how much time you will need to add in the future. And your game designer might think, hey, I think of this really cool fishing minigame, for instance. This really cool fishing minigame that I want to explore. I want to make the game do more of it. I want the fish to fly around. I want everything that every game has already made. And then the project manager will say, okay, hold on. To craft new fishes, to craft this new mechanic, to test it out, to localize it to other languages, etc., etc. This would take us a month of game dev. How are we with the main story? How are we with the main gameplay? Are we done? If we are done with the main gameplay, it's already really cool, already really polished. Okay, we can spend this time adding to this Noodle Factor, adding this to the gameplay experience. I believe it will be worth it. But if the main mechanics, if the main gameplay, the main story isn't finished, you should hold it up. Deliver a cool experience for every gamer, and then you can think of what to do to the other gamers. Let's see other questions here. Spike, love what you did with the shadow, but I also have a question. How long does a day last on Another Duck? 30 minutes. This is a good question, and sincerely, the day lasts forever. In What the Duck, you don't actually have the time span of a day. You never get night in the stages. In different stages, you get to experience different type of daylights. Some days, some stages you have the sun going out. You have a night gameplay, but it doesn't actually passes. Doesn't actually cycle during gameplay. This is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. While we don't do this, just by the shadow of the clouds, you get the feeling that we do. And we try to tie this feeling of having the day cycle different in another stages. But if the player just stick around for 30 minutes and do nothing, he won't see the night come. Listening, hello, Felipe has an extra problem that is to deal with me giving ideas all the time. This is actually true. They're all nice ideas, but sometimes me or Renan or a project management manager has to cut them off. They have to tell you, okay, this is a pretty nice idea. Let's put it in the box of the if we have time, we will do it, and let's finish the main gameplay so we can do it with it later on. But it's true. I think we have actually a pretty nice development environment that everyone on the team gets to deliver ideas, gets to create some part of the game, and not only the team but the community as well. Alexander Haru did a really nice talk, a really nice presentation yesterday about how to make community part of the gameplay. If you have missed it, I really recommend checking it out. It shows how nicely he has done things from Other Duck, so that the community is actually part of the game development process. Some of the things that got into Other Duck are only there because our community is awesome. It's like, but is this feeling of passing time just to be juicy? Yes. It's just to be juicy, and juicy in a lot of ways. Not only the Noodle Factor, the player has this feeling, but also in a visual aspect. Let me go back to the GIF real quick. Here, our artist, our concept artist, was really bothered that with the lack of shadows in the game. You have the shadows, of course, from trees, from the player. But with large open spaces, much like this one that you guys are seeing, we don't have much. We have the player, the NPCs, and the trees. And we solved that problem adding the shadow of the clouds. So it adds a whole not a lot of depth to the color of the game. So yeah, it is just to be juicy, but it goes further than the Noodle Factor that I'm trying to explain here. It is juicy to your eyes. Your fist on it. I hope I got to answer your question. It will be to have missions that only happen at a certain time, but I think that it doesn't really fit the game. But I'd love to have that in the game. I talk about missions that... Okay, I understand. Missions that you can only do at night, for instance. Huh? I got it. Yeah, I agree with you. It would be great. A lot of games that do this beautifully. Zelda is one that does this beautifully. The last one, Breath of the Wild, of course, but I always go back to the Majora's Mask. That is all about it. You have to really take a look at the time of what you're doing. But sadly, we won't have this in What the Duck. We have missions that change as long as you're exploring the game, but not time-based. Maybe on What the Duck 2. Well, so this is it, guys. We got to our time, 1 hour of presentation. Thank you so much for sticking